All right, how you guys doing today? You doing all right, church? Awesome. Well, my name is Brent, and I am your campus pastor right here at our Franklin campus. And I hope that you had a great and enjoyable and safe 4th of July. I see everybody here, I think, has all of their limbs still intact, so didn't blow anything up except for the fireworks, hopefully, that you were setting off. So good to be with all of you here. If you're new here, just want to say thank you for accepting someone's invitation and spending part of your weekend with us. We're kicking off a brand new series that you just saw the video for, My Big Fat Mouth. That's right, My Big Fat Mouth. And the reason why we're calling it that is because this is kind of the overall idea that we're going to take a look at in this series, and that is our words create the quality of our life and the lives of those around us. Our words create the quality of our life and the lives of those around us. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks some different things that we all say that actually have an impact in our life as well as in the lives of those people around us. Another way to kind of think about this is we actually have the power. It's crazy. Like our mouths have the power to speak words of life or death into the life of other people. We actually read about this in Proverbs chapter 18. It says this. It says, "The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences." And we all understand how powerful this is, right? Because you can think back, maybe it's sooner than later, but there have been times in your life where people have spoken words to you and they've lifted you up and they've been very encouraging, right? Or the opposite of that has happened in your life as well. There have been words spoken to you or at you or with you that were not so encouraging and didn't really lift you up. It kind of actually pushed you away. So we understand the power of the words that come out of our mouth. And so today in week 1, we're kicking off this series by talking about what happens when we complain. The first fill in your notes there. What happens when we complain? And here's the deal. We all complain, don't we? And it starts off as little kids. For those of you that have kids, those of you that know kids, those of you that were a kid, you can relate to this. One of the things kids complain about is going to bed, don't they? Do I have to go to bed? Well, yeah. You just did it last night and the night before that and the night before that. Like it's something new. I don't know. Happens at our house all the time. Or toys, right? Toys is the greatest. They're like, I don't want to pick up my toys. You know, they complain about that. They'd rather leave them around so that we can just step on them, right? The Legos are the best. When you don't have any shoes on, you're just like, oh, it feels so good. I'm speaking for a friend. I don't know. Just saying. But then, you know, when we're teenagers, like it doesn't stop there. Teenagers today, especially in our culture, they complain about things, you know, like not being able to be on their phone 24/7. Teenagers in the house, just kidding. You don't have to respond. It's okay. Or, you know, like teenagers not having the coolest clothes, or they complain about their classes or their teachers or tests or homework, right? And then as adults, it really doesn't stop. We complain about all sorts of things. We complain about the traffic. We complain about, right now, it's too hot, right? Everybody say amen because it's way too hot right now in Indiana, right? We want to move somewhere where it's cooler, and then in the winter, then we want to go somewhere where it's warm, and so it's never, ever good enough, is it? Even like maybe you complain about our jobs. We never have enough money because we always want more things, and we never have enough money. We complain about our bosses at our jobs, don't we? And we even complain about church. Uh-oh. We do, though. I mean, we complain about, you know, the haze. We complain about the lights, complain about the music, complain about the chairs, the paint colors. I mean, there's so much that we complain about. We all have our things that we complain about, don't we? I mean, I'm no different. I'll be honest with you. I'll share a couple with you. I live in a house with 3 ladies, my wife and 2 daughters, and God has blessed them with a plentiful of hair, and it's great. Until it gets in our bathroom. Drives me nuts because it'll go in the sink or on the counter or in our bathtub, and I'm just like, get it out of here. Can't stand it. It's not supposed to be, you know, like, and you can tell, like, I don't contribute to that. Those aren't my hairs. I'm just saying, right? Another thing I'll confess to you I complain about, and I'm going to have to apologize before I say this because some of you may fall into this category, so I hope you can forgive me. But I complain about slow drivers. I do, I'll be honest with you, especially, when they pull out in front of me and, go below the speed limit. Love that. I may or may not honk on my horn. I'm just saying, I don't know. When there's two lanes, like when there's multiple lanes, there's a slow lane and there's a fast lane, and it's okay if you drive slow, just get in the lane that's made for driving slow is what I want to say for that, right? Like allow us that drive fast to go in the fast lane. And I know I just ticked some of you guys off, and now you're complaining like, oh my goodness, my pastor drives fast, I can't believe it. You can pray for me, I know, I need help. I'm working through it, this is part of the process, thank you for helping me with that. But we all complain, don't we? We have so many things that we complain about in life. It's not one thing, it's another. And it's been happening for the beginning of time. Actually, if you go back, even if you read in the Old Testament, you can read so many stories of how people complain. And I just want to share one of those with you. There was a group of people called the Israelites, and they were actually held captive in slavery to the Egyptians, and God helped to free them from that. And so they're in this transition time of trying to get out of Egypt so that they can be free. And Pharaoh, like the king back then, had a different idea. He's like, hey, let's get an army and let's go try and pull them back, right? Like I like them as slaves better. And so you would think that as they're trying to transition out, like there'd be all this excitement. Oh, I can't believe we're free and it's awesome. However, I want to read to you out of Exodus 14 some of their complaints because I want you just to kind of feel what this sounds like. It says, they said to Moses, who was their leader at the time, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? I feel like there's a finger pointing moment at that point, don't you? Like, what have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Another finger pointing moment. Didn't we tell you that this would happen while we were still in Egypt? I mean, we said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. Oh, but it doesn't end there. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than to be a corpse in the wilderness. Don't you feel that? I mean, that happens sometimes when we complain, doesn't it? Not you, but other people, right? It's crazy. So why in the world, if that's how complaining feels and sounds like, why do we do it? Why do we complain? I want to talk to you just about a few reasons why we complain. The first reason is this, because it relieves stress. It relieves stress. You may know someone, or you actually may be that someone. You call a relative or a friend on the phone, and you're going to start complaining about someone or something. Maybe it just happened that day. And it's not really that you're looking for solutions on the other end of the line for them to tell you. You just kind of feel better because you get it off your chest, right? You don't have to raise your hand, all right? But that happens because we feel like we relieve stress. Another reason why we complain is this, because we can't solve a problem. Maybe you're like me and you're not like the handyman around the house. You're not a fix-it type of person. And so, I have to call pretty much on every project that we have, I have to call someone to help me out. Because the projects that I do, there's either a part missing or it doesn't fit together the way it should, or, it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. And so I'm ready to pull what hair I do have out because I'm so frustrated and I just want to complain about it, right? Another reason why we complain is because we're depressed or we're sad. And this is a tough place to be if you're in this place, right? You kind of feel like hopelessness and the world is caving in and there's really just kind of stuck in this area so that all you do maybe is complain. Another reason why we complain is because we're trained to complain. Maybe you grew up in a family of complainers. Or maybe at work, you work around people, or you go to school with people that complain over and over and over and over again. And before you even know it, you're starting to complain because your psyche has been affected by them complaining all the time. It happens. Another reason why we complain is to get attention. Don't we? I mean, there's someone that's smarter than you. There's someone that's more athletic than you. There's someone that's better than you at something, and they're getting all the attention and you're not. And so we complain about that. This happens so often on social media. And then the last way I want to talk to you about why we complain, and this hits everybody, is we don't get our way. We don't get our way. We have this sense of entitlement that we feel like things should go our way, don't we? And when it doesn't go our way, then what do? We complain. That's a natural response to what happens. And so as we're looking through this list and we're like, yeah, we definitely, hit that one and maybe, one or two other ones that we're like, I'm guilty, yeah, that's me. So what? Right? What effect does it really have on us? Let's answer this question. How does complaining affect the quality of our life? Because in this series, we're talking about how our words that come out of our mouth actually affect the quality of our life and those around us. And so let's talk about this for just a little bit. You have a section in your notes there that are blank. You can write some of these things down. One of the first things, or one of the things that happens as an effect of complaining is that it affects your relationships, and no one wants to be around you. No one wants to be around you. I mean, you felt how yucky and gross the complaining from the Israelites were, right? If I were to go around the room, I know that sounds really harsh, but if I were to go around the room today and ask, how many of you would love to sit next to or ride in a car with or go to lunch with someone that complains all the time? I'm pretty sure no one would raise their hand, right? No one wants to be around you when you complain over and over again. Another effect that happens from complaining is that negativity breeds negativity. Negativity breeds negativity. And I want to share, there's actually research that they've done on this to show that it becomes a habit. Research has shown that your brain actually loves efficiency, and it doesn't like to work any harder than it has to, right? A lot of people are like, amen to that. When you repeat a behavior such as complaining, your neurons actually branch out to each other to ease the flow of information, and it makes it much easier to repeat this behavior in the future. So easy, in fact, that you actually don't realize that you are doing it. It becomes a habit over and over and over again. And so the next thing that actually leads to then is a dissatisfaction with life. There's a dissatisfaction with life. Basically what that is like you start to look through this lens in which you see the world around you as nothing is ever good enough. It's never good enough. When I think about this, I think about if anybody's seen Winnie the Pooh, right? Remember back to those days? And Winnie the Pooh, there's a character in there. How many of you remember Eeyore? Anybody remember Eeyore in there? Yeah? Like the donkey always losing his tail, and he's slumped over, kind of like this, and he's swagging his head. And he's saying things like, well, just another rainy day. Like as if every day is a gloomy day. And it's never going to be a good day because things are never going to be good enough in life. And so we have this dissatisfaction in life that comes. Did you know that another effect is there are actually physical effects that come from complaining? I kid you not. There's research that shows this too, that complaining can lead to brain damage. How many want that? Woo! Yeah, right? But it doesn't stop there. Oh, it gets better. When you complain, your body releases the stress hormone called cortisol. Cortisol shifts you into a fight or flight mode, which directs oxygen, blood, and energy away from everything but the systems that are actually essential for immediate survival. And so you want to know some of the things, the results from that? Oh, they're great. Let me tell you. High blood pressure, high blood sugar. Who's ready to sign up for that? Give me some more high blood pressure. In fact, I'll tell you, it's crazy how God works sometimes, I think. I have to laugh because just yesterday, something happened, and I texted my wife about it, and she's like, are you complaining? I was like, no, but my blood pressure is really high right now. This is crazy. I felt the results of wanting to take that step into complaining, their actual physical results. And one of the last things that happens when we complain, one of the effects that happens is we have less influence for Christ. We have less influence for Christ. Now, I know that some of you here today may not be followers of Jesus, and that may not matter to you, and I get that. But for those of you that are followers of Jesus, it should matter to you a whole lot what your influence for Christ is. Jesus said this in Matthew chapter 5. He said, you, as followers of Jesus, are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it's lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You're also the light of the world. like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. That seems silly, right? But instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your Father in heaven. So let's be honest, like if no one wants to be around you, and negativity is breeding more negativity, and you're having this dissatisfaction in life, how much impact do you really think you're going to have in the life of someone else for Jesus? Probably not much, if any, right? I mean, we're supposed to be light and salt and love and joy, because that's who Jesus is. And how are they going to see and experience that and even want that if we are complaining? And so then we get to the place where we say, okay, well, how do we stop complaining then, right? How do we instead start moving in this direction where we speak life into others? How do we start to experience a different quality of life than what complaining brings? I want to talk to you about 4 ways in which you can do that. And the first one is this. You got to start telling yourself, it's not about me. In fact, I'm going to ask you all to say this with me, so it's really uncomfortable. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. It's not about me. Give yourselves a hand for that. Great job, great job. Woo! This is a big step. It really is, because, listen, this is hard. I get it. It's hard. We believe and tell ourselves a whole lot that we are the center of the universe. We do. I get it. And if we're the center of the universe, then we talked about this earlier, everything should go our way. And so we have to get to the point where we tell ourselves, it's not about me. I want to share a story with you that helps to illustrate this. One of the things that if it were up to me, if it were my preference, if I got, kind of my world the way I wanted it to be, I would own and drive a truck, full-size pickup truck. I know some of you are like, well, that's different, and I know, but that's just my preference, right? Like, you got your thing, I got my thing. In fact, a few years ago, I actually owned and drove a pickup truck, and I loved it. It was great. It's not brand new, wasn't all souped up and all the latest upgrades, but it was a nice truck, and it got me from where I needed to go, and it, met my desires of wanting to own and drive a truck, and I loved it. I mentioned to you before that I have a wife and 2 daughters. A couple of years ago, we stepped into fostering 2 little boys, which I'm excited to tell you, church, that we have an adoption day this week, that we get to adopt them and they can become a forever part of our home. Woo! We're really, really excited about that. We're pumped and feel blessed. But you can do the math. We had 4 people in our family and we had 2 more, so now we have 6. And we didn't have a vehicle at the time that would fit 6 people comfortably, with like the car seats and the diaper bag and all that stuff. And so my wife Amy and I, we decided that the right thing for us to do was for us to trade in my truck to get another vehicle. Good times. I'll be honest with you, it wasn't easy. I had these thoughts that went through my mind that said things like this. It said, well, that's your truck. Why do you got to get rid of your truck? Like, you've worked really hard for that truck. You saved up a whole lot of money for that truck. I mean, you spent time researching to get that truck for you. Why are you getting rid of it? And those thoughts went through my mind, and I had to come back to the place where I was telling myself, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. There's something bigger at play here, and I have to be okay with not getting everything that I want. Paul talks about this in Galatians chapter 2. He says this. He says, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body. How do I do it? By trusting in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. You see, as followers of Jesus, this is a whole new way of living life. It's different than the all about me mentality. In fact, you are no longer the center of your story. Jesus is the center of your story. And when that happens, then your desires have to start to be shifted and reoriented and prioritized with God's desires. And sometimes those match up, and sometimes they don't. And you have to be okay with not getting everything that you want. Number 2, another way you stop complaining is this. You got to do something. You got to do something. Let me tell you what I mean by this. Listen, there are circumstances in life that you do not have control over, and I get that. But most of the circumstances in life that we go through, we actually do have control over. And when we do, we have to take action on those. Let me give you some examples of that. You want to lose weight? Because whether you want to get more in shape or because of health reasons, instead of complaining, you can take action and do something. You can get in the gym, you can exercise, you can diet, right? Another example of that is if you don't like your job, instead of complaining, go get a different job. There's a ton of them out there in this economy today, so it's really not as hard as it can be sometimes. Just get a different job. You can do something. If you don't like where you're at financially and you want to get out of debt, instead of complaining about it, stop spending money on things that you don't need and save. And if you don't know how to do that, you can enroll in Financial Peace University right here during our group semesters. That actually starts in August, and they'll teach you how to do it. Right? You can take action and do something. Listen, here's another example. You don't like the drive-through line, it's too long. Go to Chick-fil-A. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You've been there. The line is forever long, and man, they have some sort of system. They've got it figured out. I mean, they'll get you through like that. It's amazing. Right? And if Chick-fil-A is not your thing, I get it. Go somewhere else. It actually happened to me, I'm not kidding you, a couple weeks ago. I had a meeting that I had to go to, and so I had to grab some fast food, to get a meal on the way. So my first choice, I pull into the preference that I really wanted to eat that day, and the line was forever long and not moving, and so I thought, okay, I'll go to the next place. The next place, was kind of long line and not moving, and so I thought, okay, well, like they say, third time's a charm, happened to work out that way, in this particular setting. And so did, less line, and I got my food. I could have complained, I could have stood in that first line and been like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, people. I got somewhere to be, like time is ticking here. This is horrible. And I could have complained, and it would have affected like my attitude and my life at that time. Not only that, but I could have taken that into my meeting and affected everyone else that was in that meeting. But instead, I did something about it. I went to the next place, right? That was there. Jim Rohn, who is a former motivational speaker, he said this. I want to share this with you. He said, if you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree. I love this because it's so practical. I feel like it helps us paint this picture of like you're not stuck in so many situations in your life. You're not. You're not rooted down and planted like you think you might be, and so there's an option besides complaining. Now, I want to share with you actually what God has to say about this. If you remember the story about the Israelites that we talked about at the beginning and how they were complaining over and over and over again, you want to hear how God responded to that? I love this. Check this out. Exodus 14. The Lord said to Moses, again, who was leading the people at the time, he said, why are you crying out? Tell the people to, say this with me, get moving. Go! Right? Like a kick in the pants. I love this. Because God is basically saying, hey, listen, stop whining and complaining about where you have been or where you think you should be and get going because there's so much more in store for life that I have for you. You ever feel that way? You ever been there where you're like, I just want to be here. I think we should do this. It's better. God's like, no, keep moving. I've got so much better in store for you in life if you will just keep moving. And so I want to ask you, what situations in life are you going through right now that you have control over, that you can do something about instead of complaining? Now listen, I know that every situation in life, there are sometimes things come up in life and you don't have control over them. Things such as like diseases and cancer and accidents, and even sometimes death can be that way. And so what do we do instead of complaining in those situations? You can change the way you think about it. You can change the way that you think about it. Paul, who was the writer of actually most of the New Testament in the Bible, he had this passion and this desire and this dream to go to Rome. And it wasn't because he wanted to necessarily go there on vacation. He actually felt like if he had the opportunity to preach the gospel, to share the good news of Jesus, that it would actually potentially impact the entire world, because back in those days, Rome was in a position that they had so much authority and influence that it could impact the entire world. And so Paul wanted to go there and try to preach the gospel. And you know what? His dream came true. It just didn't come true in the way that he thought it was going to come true. Because instead of ending up in Rome as a preacher or a speaker, Paul actually ended up in Rome as a prisoner. Because back then, he was speaking about Jesus all the time, and some of the officials really didn't care for it. So they were kind of watching him like a hawk, is he going to run this stop sign, go too fast on his donkey? I don't know, looking at him, whatever's going on. And so, man, when he did something, they were on him, put the cuffs on him, and took him to prison. So if anybody had reason to complain, it could have been Paul, right? He's in a situation that's out of his control. He really doesn't want to be in. But instead of complaining, I want you to hear what Paul says in Philippians. These are his words. He says, I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that's happened to me here has helped to spread the good news. For everyone here, I love this, including the whole palace guard, knows that I'm in chains because of Christ. And because of my imprisonment, watch what happens. Most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. It's awesome. Paul could have complained and been like, are you serious? I'm doing this work for Jesus, and this is what happens? I get in prison? He could have said all those things, but instead, Paul changed the way that he thought about his situation. He's like, I'm chained to these guards all day long. They got nowhere to go. They got no one else to listen to, so I'm going to talk to them about Jesus, right? So not only did it start to impact their life, but they're rubbing shoulders with, and they're having conversations with some of the most influential people in Rome, and the news starts to spread. And so not only do other people start to hear about Jesus, but we read right here, it actually impacts the quality of life of other followers of Jesus. They gained confidence, and they boldly spoke about their own faith because of how Paul responded to his situation. He changed the way you think about it. And some of you are sitting there and you're like, that's great. That's a great Bible story. Does that really happen in real life? It does. It really does. So many times. And I want to share just one story with you this morning about that from a family that's actually right here in our very own campus, at the Franklin campus. I want to show you a picture of them. This is Brandon and this is Marky and their two daughters, Millie and Elsie. Elsie and Millie. Sorry, guys. And they, back in August, Marky was about 33 weeks along with baby Millie and started to have some contractions. And so they called the doctor, and the doctor told them, hey, probably be a good idea if you come to the hospital. So they went, right here in Johnson County Memorial. And when they got there, kind of got everything set up and found out that she was actually going into labor, which is not good because she was only 33 weeks along. And so they tried to give her some medication to slow the labor down and to actually stop it, and it wasn't working. And so the doctors suggested, hey, the best thing for you to do is actually to go up to St. Vincent on the north side of Indianapolis to be the best for both delivery, baby, and mom. And so they did that. They life-flighted her up there, and about 15 minutes after she got to St. Vincent, she gave birth. And the baby was in the NICU for 17 days. They didn't ask for that. They didn't want it. It's not the way things are supposed to go. But it's a situation in life that it happened. They had no control over it. And they could have complained. But you know what they did instead? They changed the way that they thought about it. It's pretty amazing. Actually, before they left the hospital here at Johnson County Memorial, they asked to pray with the doctors and nurses. And some of them obliged and did it. And then on the way there, Brandon had to drive separately, and he was, contacting some friends and family to, kind of pray for them. They were an hour away from home. That wasn't planned, so they had to find some sort of lodging up there. And then while they were there, they're talking to the people in the rooms that are next to them, and Brandon's talking to people in the waiting room, and they're sharing stories, and Brandon's, sharing the gospel with them and praying with them. I mean, their lives are impacted and changed because of that. And not only that, but when they were sharing that with me, I felt so encouraged. And I was like, man, I can do this. If they can do that, I can do that too. How about you? What are the situations that you're going through in life that you have no control over? And instead of complaining, you can change the way that you think about it. The fourth thing that I want to share with you, how you can stop complaining, is this. You can decide to be thankful. You can decide to be thankful. Listen, this is more than just saying the words thank you. This is actually a lifestyle. This is a posture of your heart and your mind. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 says this. It says, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is, say it with me, God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. So for those of us that are followers of Jesus, this is actually who we are called to be. It's who we are called to be. It's this outward expression of what's going on inside in our heart and our mind. And so it can sound things like this. Instead of complaining about your health, you can instead say, thanks God for the breath in my lungs that I get to live today. Instead of sounding like this, instead of complaining about, man, I don't like my job, I really don't care for it, you can say things like, you know what, God, thanks for this job that actually provides food on the table and a roof over my head and clothes on my back. Instead of complaining about some of those people in your life, whether it's your friends or your family that you're close with, and they just drive you crazy. Instead of complaining about them, instead you can be thankful to God that there are people that love you and that you have the opportunity to love them as well. Because you see, here's the deal. Deciding to be thankful is not about what you don't have, but rather what God has already given to you. Can I say that again? Deciding to be thankful is not about what you don't have, but rather it's what God has already given to you. When you live in this attitude of gratitude, the quality of your life changes. And so I want to ask you here, before we leave today, this question: what will you do to stop complaining? What will you do to stop complaining? Listen, I know 4 things is a lot, and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't think I can do 4. That's okay. Start with 1. What's one thing that you can leave here today to start doing to stop complaining? Do you need to start telling yourself, hey, it's not about me. I don't need to get everything that I think I want and deserve. Do you need to do something in the circumstances that you don't have control over, that you have control over in life? Do you need to start to take action and do something? Do you need to start to change the way that you think about some of those circumstances that you actually don't have control over? Or are you at that point where you're ready, you're going to decide to be thankful no matter what the circumstances are in life? In all circumstances, be thankful. Can you imagine what this would look like in your life? The levels of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, they would go up, wouldn't they? And not only would it change the quality of your life, but it could also change the quality of the life of the people around you. Now, some of you are here today and you've been living by that mentality of it's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. But yet today something clicked for you. Today you connected with a truth that God spoke to you. Maybe even when we talked about the Galatians chapter 2 where Paul said this, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body. How? By trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. And that's what Jesus Christ wants each and every single one of you to know here today. If you're at that point where you're ready to step into the relationship with God and out of it being all about you, God wants you to know that he loves you so much that he gave his one and only Son to die on a cross and to be raised from the dead 3 days later. Not only so that you have the opportunity to go to heaven when you die, but so that you get to experience the quality of life that God actually designed for you in the first place. And so I want to invite you all, if you would, right where you are, to bow your head and close your eyes. And if that's you, I'm just going to ask you to say a simple prayer. It can sound something like the words that I'm about to say. You can take them and make them your own. And you can say something like this: God, thank you for your love. Thank you for your grace, that you would send your son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross and to be raised 3 days later so that I could no longer be the center of my story. But God, I'm trusting that to you now. And I'm looking forward to how the quality of my life is going to get better and better and better every single day. So I look forward to following you from this moment forward. In your name that I pray, amen. Amen. You know, it tells us in Scripture that when one person comes to Christ, that all of heaven rejoices. And so, church, we want to celebrate that today with him, don't we? Amen? Amen. And if you prayed that prayer this morning, not only do we want to celebrate with you, but we want to put a New Believer's Bible in your hand to get you connected with God's truth so that you can start to experience the quality of life that God has in store for you. So on your way out, we have New Believers tables to your right and to your left. Would you just stop by and let them know that you prayed that prayer, and they would love to get a Bible in your hand and connect with you. Hey, as we close out our time here today, we want to be able to respond in how amazing our God is with thankfulness and a heart of gratitude. And so the band is going to lead us in a song for that at this time.